everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, and today we are going to be making a collared jumper. Now my design is to be a more of a spring autumn time jumper, lightweight, and easy to wear without having to have a big shirt or t-shirt underneath, a cameo, or just your bra, or it's fine. I'm using this yarn here. Now this yarn is called sari yarn. It is a lightweight fluffy yarn, but it isn't irritating in any way. I actually really love using this. I find this a simple yarn to use. Get this at Spotlight, and it is where is the details? So it's 22% wool, 30% polyamide, and 48% whatever that is, polyacrylic. Now it needs a 5mm hook, but we are going to be using a 5.5. But as always, do it to the tension that works for you. 5.5 works really well for me. I want a lightweight jumper. I don't want it thick and bulky, so that's why I'm using a 5.5mm hook. This is a 165-gram ball, so we are going to be doing it two-toned. So the body of the jumper is one color and the neck and collar is a different color, and as you notice, it's got the stripe down the middle. So I'm doing the red as the body of this jumper and the grey as the detailing, the collar and the stripe. You will need 8 balls of color A. For me, color A is the red, and 2 balls of color B, and color B for me is the grey. So pick the colors that you like. If you can't find this yarn, do find something that is light and fluffy, and you will need 165 meters times by 8 and times by 2 to get the amount that you require. We will be making a large size, but I will be putting sizes and the notes that I have in the description below, and I'll drop some sizes up on the sides when it's relevant. So besides the yarn, you will also need your hook. I always use a bigger hook to start my chain. It makes it more even. So I'm using my 6.5. And then for the body of the work, I'm using my 5. These hooks I get from Furls. For all the ribbing, you will need your 4.5mm hook. You'll need your tape measure, your yarn needle, some stitch markers, and a pair of scissors. Okay, let's get this project started. If you enjoy my content and want to support my channel, you can buy me a coffee at the link in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. Once you have found your end of your colour A yarn, make a long tail, because that's what you're going to sew the side up with, and then do your slip knot on your larger size hook. So mine is my 6.5. Make your slip knot, and then we are going to be chaining 140. We're working long ways, not width ways going up. We're working long ways and going across. So the amount of stitches, no matter what size you choose, is always going to be the same. What is going to change is the side panels. The back panel and the front panel stay exactly the same size, but the side panels, the 2 side panels, change in how many rows you do depending on the size. So as we are going to be doing the large, we will be doing 22 rows. So depending on the size, depends on how many rows, and I will leave it up here somewhere for you to see. All right, so we are going to be chaining 140 stitches. Now that we have finished our chain, we need to change our hook from our 6.5 to our 5.5. Now we're going to chain 1 and we're going to be doing half double crochets. So pretty much the whole jumper is half double crochet. And what we want to do is work on the back of the chain, not the front. So the front has these V's and the back have these lumps. We're going to be working our stitches into these lumps here. So for a half double crochet, we're going to go yarn over. Now we're missing that chain 1 we just did, and we're going into the next chain and putting our stitch in that lump. So yarn over, go into that lump there, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Yarn over, going into the next lump, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. And you are going to be continuing all the way down to the very end. Now when you get to the end, just make sure that you still have your 140 stitches. Done all our stitches in the chain, and it is 140 stitches. That is row 1 complete. So now we chain 1, turn our work, and we continue. So you half double crochet straight into the first stitch and keep going. And you want to do, this is row 2, and if you're doing the large like me, we're doing 22 rows. Please look up in the corner here and I will list how many rows you need to do if you are wanting a different size. So keep doing your rows until you have the required amount of rows to the size that you would like. For me, I'm doing a large, so I'm going to do 22 rows. I will meet you back here after I have completed my 22 rows. Okay, so I have finished my 22 rows, and now what I need to do is mark off 65 stitches. So what you do is count 65 stitches and then put a stitch marker in at your 66th. So you're going to be working these 65 stitches up to, but not including the stitch marker, for 9 rows. So this is starting the front of your jumper. So you need to chain 1, and then on turning your work, you are working your half double crochet still and up to, but not including that stitch marker, because that stitch marker is in the 66th stitch. So you just want to work 65 stitches for 9 rows. So going backwards and forth, just those 65 stitches for the 9 rows, and you need to make sure that at the end of your 9th row, you're up in this area here. This is the neck area. So this is the halfway point of your jumper, of this panel that we've done. Because if you remember, we are working along the body, not across, but up and down. So we're now creating the front panel, and this is the neck area. So we're only working to here. All right, so do 9 rows up to this point, going backwards and forwards for 9 rows. And I'll meet you back here when you've finished your 9th row, and you should be finished at this end. Okay, so at your neck end. Okay, I've done my 9 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now what I need to do is change to my other colour. So my colour B. So I finished with this for now. So snip it off. But to join the colour, this is what what I do when I join a colour or join another yarn. So I've run out and I join it. So just go back a stitch and then start your half double crochet like you would, but instead of bringing this yarn through, we're going to bring the other one through. There we go. And we'll just leave your tails and you'll sew them in later. Okay, so what we're doing now is starting the collar, and I need to chain 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so you are now going to do an extra 1 and then turn so that, like you did when you started, that you're doing your stitches on the back side of your V. So not that front, but turning it and going into the lumps in the back. So missing that chain 1 you did and doing our half double crochet straight into the back of the chain. Now make sure you are doing it into the back of the chain because you want that nice edge. That is the edge of your collar that you've got there. So work your way down, putting a stitch in each one of these chains up to my last chain. And then all you're going to do is continue your half double crochets straight down to the bottom. And that should bring you to a total of 85 stitches that you have just done in the grey. When you are at the end of this row, I'll let you know what to do next. At the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and you're going to do 2 more rows in this grey here. Okay, so when you have finished those 2 more rows, I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. We've finished those 3 rows and we're finished with the grey here for now. And what we need to do, don't end off because we're going to join the red down here soon. So just snip off the end and put in a stitch marker. And we'll come back to that. Go back up to your collar. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Okay. So you need to count 30 stitches down. And that's where you're going to rejoin the yarn. You can see that I have counted 30 stitches down. I've put a stitch mark in the 30 stitch just so I know where I'm at. Now this is probably going to be the trickiest part. Alright, put your hook in, start your yarn, however you start your yarn. Okay, so we are now going to chain 30. Okay, so I have my chain of 30, chain 1, same as before, turn your work and do your stitches into the back of the V, so missing that chain 1 and working your stitches in the back of the V into that lump. So do your 30 stitches down your chain. I'll meet you back here when you have done that. I've done my first row of 30 on that chain. So I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and I'm going to do 2 more rows. So this is the second half of the collar, the flap that goes over at the front. And later on you'll be sewing this behind that first part, and I'll show you in a tick. So I'll meet you back here when you've done your total of 3 rows, so 2 more rows. Okay, so I've done a total of my 3 rows on this little bit of the collar, and leave yourself a little bit of a tail. So we're finished with the grey here. Leave yourself a bit of a tail and snip that off, and that's what we're going to sew the back in. So bring that through like so, and then I would advise doing this now. See how they're going to line up like so. So you need to sew onto the back along the back there. Can you see that? There it is flapping. So you want to sew it along here. So I've left the stitch marker there. So I'm going to sew along there just above that stitch marker. So this is now attached to there. I would do that now because we are going to be working on this and you don't want it flapping about all over the place. So stitch that on there so that it's flat just along the bottom, and I'll meet you back here once that is done. Alright, so that is sewn on. You can see we've got our 2 flaps there, and you can see that it is sewn on and ready to go. Right, so what we now need to do is go back down to the bottom, and we're rejoining on our red. So get the end of your red. Taking out that stitch marker. Now doing what I did before, going back 1 stitch, start my half double crochet, get my yarn, pull that through, chain 1, and we're ready to start the other half of the front of our jumper. So we are working up 65 stitches. This will include 10 stitches of that collar flap that we have just finished. So you will be working up to up here. Okay, so do this first row of 65 stitches. I'll meet you back here when you've done that. Just make sure you've got the right number of stitches when you get to that little flappy bit that you've sewn up, and you might have to wiggle and jangle around to get a stitch in there depending on how your sewing is. I'm not very good at sewing, so yeah. And I've finished that first row, so chain 1, turn your work, and we will be doing a total of 9 rows, so we have another 8 rows to go. So when you have done your total of 9 rows, don't end off. I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. I have finished those 9 rows, so make sure your 9 rows finish up in your neck area, and we are just going to put a stitch marker in here because we are going to come back to this section later on, but now we're going to be working on the back. So we've finished our front panel here, and we're going to go to back to that side panel, and we are going to be working on the back here. So what you need to do now is count 70 stitches up and place a stitch marker. Alright, so I've counted up to 70 stitches here. My stitch marker is in my 71st stitch, which means I have 5 stitches from the stitch marker to the front panel. Alright, this creates the neck area. We are going to be working but from the stitch marker down. Alright, and working backwards and forwards to do the back panel. Let's get another ball of yarn because we're leaving our other ball attached. And go to your stitch marker, just to that stitch in front, because that's when I counted up to the 70th, so that would be 71. So we're going into that stitch marker the stitch in front of the stitch marker. Start your yarn however you start your yarn, and doing our first stitch straight into that same stitch that we started our yarn, half double crochets, and work your row down, and make sure when you finish this row you have 70 stitches, and I will meet you at the end of this row. I've come to the end of the first row of the back panel, and I've checked, I've got my 70 stitches, so chain 1, turn your work, and continue doing rows until you have completed 20 rows for this back panel. Once you have completed your 20 rows, meet me back here and I will show you what to do next. Your 20th row should finish you in the neck. Alright, so I will meet you back here and let you know what to do next. I have done my 20 rows, so now I've finished off here in the neck, and so you can see there, that's the front, that's the back, here's the neck area, and we finished this side on the back, so snip it off and then pull that through. Now go to your other side where you left your other ball of yarn, move that one with a stitch marker, and we're going to restart right here where we left that with the stitch marker from the front panel. So we're now back on the front panel, and put your hook in and chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to join this chain to the back panel, so this joins your neck together. Alright, everything is falling off the table. Okay, so to join onto the back panel, yarn over. I just put my finger on the yarn there on the hook, and then hook straight into the first stitch of the back panel, pull your yarn through, and then yarn over and straight through all the loops on the hook, and there you have it. You have joined your chain from the front to the back, and we've completed the opening of the neck. And then continue half double crocheting all the way down the back. And I'll meet you at the end of the row. We are at the end of that row, and now we chain 1 and we turn our work, and this is now row 1 of the other side panel. So however many rows you did on your first side panel, that's the exact same amount of rows you're going to be doing on this side panel. So for me, that is 22 rows because I'm doing a large. So this is row number 1 of my 22 rows for my second side panel. So work your way up to the chain. I'll meet you there when you've got to that point. Little tip, row number 1, I grab a stitch marker and I put that on row number 1 so I don't lose where I'm counting, but you can also count from the chain at the neck up as well. When you get to your chain, you are working your stitches in the back of the chain as we've always been doing, so in those loops in the back. So do your half double crochets into those 5 stitches. And then you've done that, you just keep crocheting your half double crochets all the way to the end. And that is the complete of row number 1. I've got 21 rows more to do. Depending on what size you're doing, you'll do the same amount of rows you did on your first side panel. And when you've done that, just double check that you have the 140 stitches that you started with. And then when that's done, I'll meet you back here and we'll start sewing up the sides and working on the arms. Finished the other side of the jumper, so now the body of the jumper is done. It is time to cut off a very long tail, and when you have done that, just bring that through. Make sure the tail is long because this is what you're going to sew up the side with. And then fold your jumper in half inside out. Oh, there we go. Now, I always put a stitch marker on the inside of my jumpers just so I know I've got it the right way. Sometimes it is difficult to tell. And then put that very long tail that you just left onto your yarn needle and sew up the side. Now it's quite easy to sew up the sides on this jumper because you can see the stitches easily on either side, and what I do is I just slip my needle in just to start it off, and then you'll see your stitches. This yarn's a bit fluffy so it might be hard to see. You'll see 1 stitch, 2 stitch, so I always go on the inside of the jumper, so there's the back of that stitch and the front of the stitch on the other side, and I just sew all the way up. So sew up until you have 53 stitches left. So when you have 53 stitches left to sew up, you're not going to sew those up. That will become your armhole. Stop there and I will meet you there and I will show you what we do next. When you have sewn up the side and you have your armhole of 53 stitches, then just end off your yarn, and then we will start on the sleeve. Turn your jumper the right way around and go to one of your sleeve holes. Now I've already done one of the sleeves here, and so get yourself a whole bunch of stitch markers because I use them to count, and we will also be doing a rib edge for the cuffs, which will end up matching the rib edge we're going to do for the collar. Alright, so go to your sleeve, the arm opening, and put your hook in to the first stitch in your sleeve hole. Grab your yarn and start your yarn however you start your yarn. And then you work up half double crochet for your 53 stitches that you have left around your sleeve. So each one of these stitches, put a half double crochet stitch into those stitches and work up 53. Once you have done your 53 stitches, then what you need to do is join your row together. So there's my starting stitch here, and I'm going to slip stitch. So there's the top of my stitch, put my hook straight in, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on the hook. So I've just done a slip stitch. Chain 1, turn your work, and then we're going to do row number 2 of the sleeve, missing that first stitch, and we're doing our half double crochets all the way around for our second row. And make sure to count. It is really easy on this sleeve to gain a stitch or lose a stitch, so count each row. So do your 53 stitches, and I will meet you at the end of the row. Coming to the end of the row, and I'm up to my last stitch, so I put the last stitch in the same hole, the same stitch as before that I started my row with. So I'm going to put my last half double crochet for this round in that stitch, and then I join the row together with a slip stitch. Chain 1, turn your work, and repeat. So you need to repeat the same steps 2 more rows. So miss that first stitch and do row number 3, and then repeat for row number 4. When you have finished your 4 rows, I will meet you back here and tell you what you need to do next. At the end of my 4th row, so we're going to do the last stitch, join, slip stitch the row together, chain 1, turn your work. Now I did forget to mention on the very first row, put a stitch marker so you know that is row number 1. Then you got 2, 3, 4, and we're on the 5th row. Now every 5th row in each of these lots, so there'll be, you'll see there's 5 rows, 5 rows, 5 rows. We're going to do that 7 times. So every 5th row we're going to decrease. So you're going to miss that stitch like we always do. Yarn over, go straight into the 2nd stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through. Go straight into the 3rd stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. So let's run through that again. We're going to miss that first stitch, yarn over into the 2nd stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then we go into the 3rd stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook, and that is your decrease. Then you just half double crochet as normal, so it should be 1 stitch left, which means it'll be 52 stitches at the end of this row. When I've done a few stitches in, I grab a stitch marker and I put a stitch marker on that row so that I know that this is row number 5 of that lot. So I'll meet you at the end of this row. I am at the end of that decrease row, so row number 5 in this lot, and we just join together as usual with our slip stitch. Chain 1, turn your work, and continue as normal. Now we are going to do 4 rows without a decrease, and then the 5th row will be a decrease. 4 rows without a decrease, 5th row decrease, 4 rows, so on and so forth. So for this next panel of 5, I'm going to do your 4 rows. without a decrease, and then I'm going to meet you back here to go through the decrease another time for that 5th row. All right, so do your 4 rows without a decrease, and I'll meet you back here after that. I have finished my second lot of 4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and so now I'm just going to do my last stitch, join my row together, chain 1, turn my work, and now because this is the 5th row of that section, we are going to be doing a decrease. So to decrease, remember you're missing that first stitch, yarn over, straight into the second stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then straight into your third stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. This will now make it, continue with your half double crochets, this will now make it that I should have 51 stitches left after this, finishing this row, and I will meet you at the end of this row. At the end of this row, and then slip stitch together, double check that you have the right amount of stitches, and I'm going to grab a stitch marker and put it in this row. So that should be 2 lots of 5 done, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 2 lots of 5. We need to do 7 of those for each sleeve. So continue working each 5 panels 7 times. So 4 rows without a decrease and your 5th row with a decrease. So we've done 1, 2, and I need to do it 5 more times. So when I've done my 7 lots and you have 2, come back here and I will show you what to do next. We have finished the body of the sleeve, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lots of 5 rows I have done, and now we need to do the cuff. So before you join your cuff together, change your hook to your 4.5mm hook. Put that in. Go into the top of the first stitch of that round, that last round, as if you were doing a slip stitch, and grab your other colour, so your grey or whatever other colour you are doing, and pull that through. Tighten up the ends, and then you need to chain 20. We have our chain of 20. Now do one more chain, but we're not going to be working in this extra chain. We are going to be doing a rib stitch, which is your single crochet in the back loop of the stitch. So missing that extra chain that we just did and going into the next one, you go into the middle of the chain, towards the back, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. So you're going into the chain, towards the back, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. And you're going to keep doing that all the way down, and you should have 20 stitches when you get to the end of this row. I've completed the first row and I have my 20 stitches, and what I recommend for every row, count 20, that you've got the 20 stitches, because it's so easy to lose count. Now what we are going to do is cinch in the cuff. So you can see that this is much wider than here. So we're decreasing on every row when we come down to the cuff. And how we do that is what I'm going to show you, but you'll end up with a much narrower cuff than the sleeve. Okay, so how we do this, when we come to the edge of the sleeve here, we will be decreasing. So how we do that is, you can see where it's attached there. We're going to go into 3 next stitches with a slip stitch. So we go straight into the first stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, then pull through the loop on the hook, go into the next stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on the hook, and then go into the third stitch, pull the yarn through, and pull through the loop on the hook. So you've got 1, 2, 3. So you're going to count back those 3, 1, 2, 3, and come to the first stitch of your row. And you will be working your single crochets in the back loop and doing your ribbing as you did for the first row. So all the way up, you can see there's my stitch going straight in towards the back. Grab my yarn, pull it through, then grab my yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. So that's called working in the back loop or the rib stitch. So we'll do our rib stitch all the way up. Make sure you count all your stitches to make sure you have 20 stitches. I'll meet you at the end of this row. Alright, I'm at the end of row 2. Chain 1 and then turn your work, and in that first stitch, not the chain, the first stitch, do the same. You're working your stitches in the back loop. Grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. And continue that all the way to the end for your 20 stitches. And I'll meet you at the end of this row, row number 3. I'm at the end of that row, back down at the sleeve. And now we're going to repeat what we did before. So we're doing a slip stitch in 1, 2, 3 stitches. Going back 1, 2, 3. So the 4th one along should be the first stitch of your next row of rib. So, and then we go and do our 20 stitches in our row. Alright, we'll meet you at the end of this row number 4. At that end of that row number 4, chain 1, turn your work, and continue on as you have been, doing your rib stitches. And I'll do this 5th row with you and run you through joining it to the sleeve again, and then I'll leave you to it. Okay, I'm at the end of that 5th row, and you can see the ribs are starting. Really see them now. So let's run through this one more time. So let's join this to the cuff. So 1, 2, 3 slip stitches, going back 1, 2, 3. There's the first stitch of the row, and then continue on as normal. All right, so continue going around your cuff in the exact same manner. And when you come back to the beginning, you'll probably find that there's only 2 stitches left to do a slip stitch in. I'm going to show you what we do next, and then we'll be joining our cuff together. All right, continue on with that, and I'll join you back here when you come up to this spot right here. I've come to the start of the cuff. Now, when you look down the bottom here, you can see I do not have 3 stitches left. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to slip stitch 1 and then slip stitch where I started, 2. Then I'm only going to go back 1, 2, and then in the 3rd one I'm going to start my row again and work my way up the cuff. I'm at the end of this final row of the cuff. So you want to finish your last row at the top end of your cuff. Okay, so we're going to now seam down here so that when you finish down here, you have your tail when you cut off your yarn and you're finished. So your tail's down here, you pull it through and you can sew it in down the bottom and it leaves it way neater. So to join together, we are going to slip stitch the two sides together. So just put your hook into the top stitch of the other side and pull your yarn through the loops on the hook. And then at the either side of the next stitch, so you'll see the next stitch there, and then go on to the other side of the next stitch on the other side, and then just slip stitch, pull your yarn through all the loops on the hook. And then go to your next stitch just on one side, go to the next stitch on the other side, and get your yarn and pull it through all the loops on the hook. So going through to the next stitch, and then the next stitch on the other side, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Okay, so you're only going through the front loop of each stitch, all right, not under the stitch, just the front loop in each stitch. All right, I'm going to leave you to finish that, and I'll meet you at the bottom of this joining. All right, I'm on the last stitch there. So now what I'm going to do is just snip off the yarn and pull that through, and then I just bring that through to the other side, and I sew that in on the other side, and there we go. There is our sleeve joined together, and then sew in all your ends. Okay, so that is that arm done, and repeat exactly the same as what you did for this arm for the other arm, and then come back and now work on doing the collar. Okay, so for the collar, we are going to be doing something very similar to what we did for the cuff, and we need to start on this side because we want the edge to look like this, and if we start on the other side, the edge will end up looking like that, and it's nowhere near as nice. Now don't be fooled, it could work out to be on that side, but remember you are going to be flipping your collar over. So you need to have that seam edge that I showed you on the inside of the cuff here. So this is why we need to start on this side, so that when we flip it over, the seam edge will be hidden underneath here, and you'll see the other edge there. All right, so what we need to do is get this flap. So this is your left hand side of your jumper. So get the flappy bit here and go to the very first stitch, put your hook in there, and then grab your yarn. Oh, by the way, we're back to our 5.5mm hook. Grab your yarn, start your yarn however you start your yarn. Okay, and then we are going to be doing our rib stitch again. So this means that the first stitch, which will be the same stitch you started your yarn in, you are going to be doing your single crochet into the back loop. So single crochet into the back loop for each stitch, and you need to do 20 stitches down this flap. Okay, so I've done my 20 stitches in the back loop only of my single crochet along here. So that's my first row of the rib. Now, I forgot to mention, if you are doing this as a left-handed crochet, you're going to start from the right-hand side. Okay, so now what we need to do is to attach our collar to the neck. So before on the cuff, we were doing 3 slip stitches, that was because we were reducing our collar to cinch it in. Now reducing our cuff to cinch it in. We're not doing that with the collar. With the collar, we're simply joining it to the neck. We are not needing to reduce it at all. So we only need to do 2 slip stitches. So what we are going to do is just go 1, 2. Now this is the end of the row, so there's no stitch. So you need to make that judgment where you're going to put your stitch. So normally what I do is, I don't know if you can see there, but there's one hole, there's another hole, there's another hole, hole. So I go, right, I've gone in that hole, let's miss that hole, and I'm going to go in that hole. Miss that hole, go into that hole, miss that hole, and so on and so forth. So every second hole I see there, that's where I'm going to put a stitch. So I've already gone in that one. I'm going to miss that hole, and I'm going to do my slip stitch in that hole. Then I'm going to go back to 1, 2, and in the third stitch there, that should be my first stitch of my next row. So, and then we're just doing our single crochets in the back loop, i.e. our rib stitch. And we are going to do our 20 stitches. Once again, I recommend that you count all your stitches. Now up to the end of the row, same as what you did before, chain 1, turn your work, and continue on doing your rib stitch. And remember to count all your stitches, and you should have 20. Down the end of the row again, so I'll run you through this one more time. So I'm going to, because I've already gone in that stitch there, I'm going to miss that stitch and go into this one here, do a slip stitch, and then miss that one there and go into that one there. And then that's my 1, 2 on the third one, which is the first stitch of the row. Go into the back of the loop, i.e. doing our rib stitch again. All right, so I'm going to leave you to do that. And when you have gone around your neck with your collar and you come back here to the other side, I will show you what we do next. I am near the end of my collar, and you can see very similar to the cuff. If you remember, the stitches, there's not 2 there. So what I'm going to do is just do 1 in this, 1 slip stitch in this same stitch that I started this flappy bit with. So just do 1 slip stitch, go back that 1, and here's the first stitch of the collar, and then just do this 1 row. So I've finished that last row, and make sure when you finish your last row of your collar, you're up the top end of the collar, not at the neck. So up the top end. And now we are going to join our flap here with the collar. And this is going to be the same way that we did the cuffs. So you're slip stitching all the way down. So put your first stitch into the first stitch of this flap, and if you remember your slip stitches, just straight through both stitches, both loops on the hook. Then going from the front loop of the next stitch down to the front loop of the flap, and then slip stitch together. And then same thing, front loop of the first next stitch and the front loop of the next stitch of the flap. And keep doing those slip stitches all the way down. I'll meet you at the bottom. Just on the last joining stitch. I always find this last one the trickiest. All right, and then just snip it off, pull it through, pull through your end to the back, sew in all your ends, and then you will be finished. And here she is, all finished with my label. And what I love about this jumper is that you can wear it from autumn through to spring in all types of weather, because you can have something underneath it, or you can have nothing at all, or just a cami or something light, because that collar really changes it up. I love the feel of this yarn, but you can use any yarn you like to do this. Just make sure the gauge goes with your hook and the sizes and everything. But yeah, so I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I have many more tutorials on my channel, so please go and check them out. Like, subscribe, hype, super thanks, buy me a coffee, whatever. And I hope I see you at another tutorial very soon. Thanks everyone. Bye everyone.